Welcome everybody. I am excited to have this conversation with you. I feel at home amongst families and advocates for people with disabilities. I would really love to start with a visual meditation on gratitude. I use this a lot in my classes. I'll introduce myself afterwards. I would really love to start with this visual meditation. Give yourself permission to just watch it and let it wash over you.
You think this is just another day in your life? It's not just another day. It's a one day that is given to you. Today. It's a gift. It's the only gift that you have right now. And the only appropriate response is gratefulness. If you learn to respond as if it were the first day in your life and the very last day, then you will have spent this day very well. Begin by opening your eyes and be surprised that you have eyes you can open. That incredible array of colors that is constantly offered to us for pure enjoyment. Look at the sky. We should really look at the sky. We should really note how different it is from moment to moment with clouds coming and going. Open your eyes, look at that. Look at the faces of people you meet. Each one has an incredible story behind their face. Not only their own story, but the story of their ancestors. All that life from generations and from so many places all over the world flows together and meets you here. Like a life-giving water if you only open your heart and drink. Open your heart to the incredible gifts that civilization gives to us. You flip the switch and there's electric light. Turn a faucet and there's warm water and cold water. And drinkable water. A gift that millions and millions in the world will never experience. And so I wish you that you will open your heart to all these blessings and let them flow through you. That everyone you will meet on this day will be blessed by you. Just by your presence. Let the gratefulness overflow and the blessing all around you. Then it will really be a good day.
Amen. I would like to start with a short prayer. Heavenly Father, we call upon your blessings and we call upon your grace. Be with us and engage with us in our conversation. Give us your wisdom and your love. Thank you for your care and, and thank you for the meaning in each one of our lives and our loved ones' lives. We belong to you. We love you. And we call your blessings upon us today. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Estera Boldut, and I moved to Canada in 2005 from Romania. I was a social worker there, and I worked in adoptions. So I work with children, abandoned children. They're like 5 days old, um, abandoned at the maternity hospital, and I would take them and move them to the orphanages that I worked at. Um, and then I had a child of my own, and we moved to Canada when I was 30, and I start life all over again. And for many years after that, I worked for Communitas Supportive Care Society in Abbotsford, and I work with families. I was a family liaison there. So I work with families who had children with disabilities, and I've done counseling, and I organized family retreats at Stillwood Camp. We would go every year. And then I went and I did my master's in marriage and family therapy at Trinity. And then I did a doctorate in psychology in California. Then I came back to Trinity, and currently I'm teaching marriage and family therapists. I'm the program director at the marriage and family therapy program at Trinity Western University. And I'm a colleague with Dr. Michael Morelli over there. And he's the one who introduced me. We dreamed together for years now, it feels like, Michael, right? Sitting around, like round table, dreaming. Um, he's a theologian, a practical theologian. So he introduced me to some of his professors and supervisors. So when I was hearing one of the main speakers talking about John uh, uh, Swinton and Brian Brock, I was like, oh, I read those guys. I know them, even though I'm not a theologian, right? So um, I will speak to you in my capacity as a counselor and as a social worker, not as a theologian, right? So you need to help me with some of the theology. Maybe I will just more like challenge the theology part of it. And maybe, Michael, you can step in and help us with some of these things. Um, Actually, I would like to tell you a little bit of a story how I chose my husband. It's connected to the topic. Um, my best friend in university, we were in an undergrad Bible school in Romania, and she was an amputee. And we were in the social work studies, and all our friends were theologians. And one day she came home crying, very upset. One of the theology students said to her, almost like she needs to prepare for a life of to be single or her life, because no man would like to marry a girl without a leg. And this was a pastor. So we were horrified. I was angry on her behalf quite a bit. And then after that, every man that kind of pursued me I asked him if he would marry my friend too. like, if he would consider marry, like, right? We are all one accident away from being disabled, like severely disabled. And I was like, what happens if I would have an accident and I will become an amputee? Would my mm, pastor husband will divorce me because he cannot be married to an amputee woman? Or so anyway, so that was kind of my uh, and keep in mind this was 25, 30 years ago almost, in the after communism Romania, with a lot of, all this. So context matters in some ways. But I asked every, oops, I'm sorry, I'm touching this, Michael, sorry, this may impact the audio there. Um, I asked every guy if he would marry, and they were friends. That's how I met my husband through this best friend of mine, and I saw how he treated her. I didn't necessarily like him in the beginning. He was a bit obnoxious, I found, but he was so very kind to her. He was so attentive, always taking care, like when she would go down the stairs to hold his arm so she would not stumble. I saw him once when they had to jump over a little thing and nobody cared. There were lots of young people, and he came back and helped her over that little thing. And I saw how he treated her, and I was like, okay, you're good. I can marry you. I know that you will treat me well. Um, and that was pretty much my initial experience with disability, with physical disability, if you wish. And I started to learn a lot of very important lessons. From that time, I prayed quite a bit. God, help me learn what I need to learn. I know that there is a purpose for my friend. She had an accident when she was a child, and she suffered terrible bullying. She had a wooden leg, right? And as a little girl, and that was terrible for her. And we prayed. Actually, I honestly believe that God can make a leg grow back for her or something. And we really, really prayed. And of course, well, nothing happened. And that was really awfully hard, I would say, because I really believe that God can do anything. And this was really hard to understand, that why we brought all the reasons to God. God, how many people will believe in you if you would do this miracle? So we knew all the reasons why God should do this, and how God would be glorified. We negotiated with God quite a bit. And then I remembered going even more back in my life when I was a child in Sunday school. My Sunday school teacher, he had a terrible disease. I don't even know the name of it. We did not know the name of it in Romania during communism. But when he was 18, the doctors told him that he would paralyze and he needs to choose a position to be in for the rest of his life. And he thought, oh, it would be hard to sleep sitting up. Maybe I need to lay down. Not thinking how much time actually he would spend laying down. And anyway, that was quite a terrible decision to make. And he chose to lay down in bed. So he had a wheelchair, a bed wheelchair, and he would be wheeled in the church. And we would, children, kind of sit around him. And he was the loveliest of people. To this day, I still dream of him sometimes. Um, I dream. This was communist Romania, so we had nothing. And during Christmas, from the little money that he had, for every child, he would make a little package. And one year, when I was maybe 10 or 12, I don't know how, he smuggled a Bible. People could go to jail for that. somehow he smuggled the Bible and he packed it up nicely and he put it in my Christmas package. And that was the most beautiful, the best gift I ever got, ever in my whole life, because I knew that somebody sacrificed their life for it. And he had only one Bible and he gave it to me. So the fact that actually he really believed in me throughout this time, that really God put a seed there, if you wish, for me. This was very normal. I don't, the love for him, the acceptance, and he modeled beautifully for me the acceptance of disability. I remember that later with my friend, after we prayed and God did not answer my prayer, I went back and I remember my Sunday school teacher, who's at peace, said, God knows better. I don't know. I don't have answers to these questions, but I will serve God. I can serve God. God can get glorified through my life the way I am. I don't need to change in any way. So there was a lot of peace. There are lots of people who said, we can pray for you. You will be healed. And I was like, I accepted God's grace in my life. So those were some of the things that I experienced as a child. But then when I moved to Canada, after working with all these orphanages, I knew that I had enough school just to do more school. And then I worked as a family liaison. So I brought all these memories with me and God's preparedness, if you wish, for me to work in a residential home with people with disabilities. Um, and I learned a lot. I've never learned so much about myself in any books, in any studies that I've done, master's and doctorate degrees, as I learned walking and doing life with these people in these homes. I remember one time um, I was helping a resident, one of the ladies. She was midlife, nonverbal and autistic, and she was blind. And she would wake up in the morning, and I would help her have a shower. And I was warned by the other workers that she doesn't want to get out of the shower and she will self-harm and she would have a hard time. It would be very hard to get her out of the shower. So I need to be on my toes with that. And I would not care. I would let her take the shower as long as she wanted. And it was kind of hard, and I would have to be soft and explain, yes, I know how much you love the shower. And maybe, hi, Ruth. So good to see you. It's so hard to get out. Tomorrow morning, we will have another shower and so on. And I would get in trouble sometimes because she would have to get ready for the day. And the bus would wait. So I would, oh, anyway, I would get in some kind of trouble. And I remember one day I was praying while she was in the shower. And I was like, God, what do you want me to notice? What do you want me to pay attention to? And um, as she was sitting under the shower and the water was going over her shoulders, she was like, making some noises, loud noises, like pleasure noises, like she was happy. And 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 then God said, um, you're the same. Don't you like the shower? And don't you like the hot water over your shoulders? And I was like, yes, I love that very much. And often when I'm taking a shower, I remember her, and I remember how we are a lot more the same than we are different. That even though she was not able to say a word, that I couldn't enter into her world to get to know enough about her. We had a lot more in common than we had different. Um, in my experience with other therapists and with other people, there is a great deal of fear of disability. And the fear about the disability is not about the other. I find that the fear is often about ourselves, our own inadequacy, and our own fears in some ways that we don't want to deal ourselves with our own limitations, with our own potential disabilities. And I would say that for people out there who are, this is not you, you're immersed in in um working and being with disability or your lives, but I'm saying more like for others who don't have the exposure and how quickly they try to say the right things or close down conversation, tying them nicely in a bow or avoid conversations and so on. Often it is about their own fears. I find that in the Western culture, we don't talk about death. We don't talk about pain and suffering. Everything that is really difficult, we do a good job avoiding it, right? Um, and again, then when we talk about belonging, then that gets really tricky because there is this connection. And when we talk about belonging, we cannot talk also about fear. Belonging, in my world, belonging is a yearning. And in counseling term, we call that universal yearning. That means that every human being has universal yearnings to be loved, to be accepted, and to belong, and to be accepted the way we are and to belong. Every single human being has those yearnings. And we say that God created us with all those yearnings. And there are actually most of the struggles that we have in life come out of unmet or unfulfilled yearnings. Um, and I think that that's important to pay attention to. In counseling, what we are trying to do usually is to go from the behavior. If you imagine like an iceberg, what we see on the outside of the water, that's the behavior. We can see that. But the behavior is not kind of on its own there. It is connected to feelings and perceptions and deep down to the yearnings. And that's what makes it really hard for us. When we see behavior, we don't necessarily see the yearnings. And we need to remember that often, and I'm talking a lot more also about like parents, when we feel exhausted and frustrated, or when we feel at the end of our rope, we need to go also deep down to our own yearnings that go unmet in some ways. And I would connect belonging also with attachment. Because when we talk attachment, it actually means, to whom do I matter? Just the other day, I love philosophy. Michael knows this. I'm not a philosopher and I cannot talk philosophy. I just love to read it. But I was reading a philosopher who was talking about the idea of self and actually how difficult it is to even know who we are. We don't have very good consciousness about ourselves until we see ourselves through the eyes of the other. Like how others are seeing us, it gives us a sense of kind of who we are. And then how do they look at us? Do they look at us with love and care and acceptance and belonging, or they're looking down at us and constantly feeling like we need to defend ourselves or explain ourselves or anything like that? This is more complicated because it starts from a very young age. Some of this sense of who we are and the gaze of the other upon ourselves, it starts before we even have language. and we make some kind of meaning about who we are before we even have language. And we carry some of that with us, and that gets tricky in some other ways. Um, when I think about mental health, I think about mental health. Daniel Siegel is a lovely psychiatrist, actually, who writes quite a bit about mental health. And he says, life is like a river, and one bank is rigidity, and one bank is like chaos. And our little boat is kind of floating down the river. Some people get stuck towards the rigidity bank, and other people get stuck to the chaos bank. And our job sometimes as counselors, for example, it is to get just a little bit unstuck so we can flow down the river. For some people, we never flow middle of the river with no worries in the world straight ahead. Often we do this kind of from bank to bank, and for some people it is just a little bit away from the bank, or one of the banks, and we kind of go slowly that way. And every little big trunk or something that comes out, we get stuck, and we need to work hard to get unstuck again from there and float a little bit. And this image, or this metaphor, if you wish, the whole big book of DSM, the one with all the mental health disorders, every one of them would fit in this metaphor, right? Yeah, all the anxiety disorders would go towards towards the rigidity, right? The OCD and all the anxiety. And some of the others with psychosis and schizophrenia would go towards the chaos. And some of them would be bipolar, would be here and there. Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing totally. But what I'm trying with this is to say that approximately half of the individuals with and I would say intellectual disabilities, that's most of my research that I read and I work with, struggle also with mental health. And in my experience, if somebody is diagnosed with an intellectual disability, the mental health is ignored. And when I worked at Communitas as a family liaison, sometimes I went with my clients, with the residents, to their appointments. That's totally all right. I went to the appointments, to the psychiatrist appointments, and I was always baffled by how ignored the mental health was. The doctor was quick to jump on medication, pretty much, like, how can I say, not even searching what would work best. Let's start slow. Let's see how that goes, and then increase the medication. They would often, in my experience in those days, they jumped on antipsychotic medications that would give like severe side effects, or drooling, or some kind of like permanent, even physical disabilities as a result, like side effects to this medication. And the doctors would just say, well, then we will give medication to deal with the side effects of the medication. And that was my experience, and I was very shocked. And maybe even one of my most shocking experiences, I worked with um, senior Down syndrome woman. She was mid 60s, and they would consider her a senior. I don't know why. To me, she was not, but that's what the doctor actually said. Because anyway, and she was not feeling very well, but she was nonverbal, so we could not know exactly what happened. And we tried to take her for some testing. We were wondering if she has cancer because she was complaining about tummy aches. Um, and the doctor refused to do the assessment because they would not do the treatment.
I
I
believe is it is the book is be happen to
yes,
my stomach is
right,
it is the habits in my face and
right.
it is sometimes I but it is if turn away it my mom is beside me if you but
Yes. And that's amazing, Christopher, that mom is there to advocate for you. And I'm just saying that it's very hard to advocate for people and anyway, and that makes it very, very hard for people to advocate when the system is not helping us. And let me just take a moment here. Michael, how much time do we have? Okay, so I should just hurry up. Um, I've done quite a lot of work on burnout prevention. And I would like to share with you just very briefly some of the findings that I got from all the readings over many years that I've done on burnout prevention. Um, I find that what's important, well, first of all, it's more like the acknowledgement how difficult it is, that there's nothing to take that away, that even talking about burnout is a little bit silly because it's more like, what can one say when the reality of life is as of such that it is way too full? We need, and here's the biggest problem, I would say, in the Western society. This is not a journey to walk alone or for a family to go, like a small family, to do this alone. We would need a whole village around every family. And somebody put the question there, like, how can the church maybe be more helpful? And especially as parents are getting older. I have a student right now doing research on exactly that topic. As parents get older, um, um, what are some of their fears and worries? And what are some of the resources out there for their adult children with disabilities? And I'm telling you, the resources are super limiting. So then, of course, that people are burning out. Um, so recognition, it's very important, and community support. And going back to that idea, what can the churches do? Well, actually rally around families. um, I worked with some families that had something called circles of support. All the all the resources that I found were started by families, run by families, um, with other families gathering together. I remember at Communitas, families saying like this, oh, even the residential resources are not enough. What can we do? Or our children will not qualify. I remember parents gathering together, saying in a building, buying 3 or 4 apartments and then hiring staff together and doing things a little bit that way. So finding, and I knew a family who had a circle of support. They went to their church and they said, as we grow older, we need some trusted people to rally around us, that we would meet 2 or 3 times a year, both for celebration, but also for updates. That if something happens to us, we know that we have people who would care for our daughter, who know, who would know our daughter, who would actually really step up to the plate together. So this would not be one person burning out, but a whole circle of people leaning on each other. Communitas you helped to facilitate starting some of those circles of support. I would say that part of the burnout prevention, it would be getting more support around families, because otherwise it's not if we burn out, is when we burn out, right?
when it is a time, but I know it is difficult to part. It is a part of the team. It could be all you have to do is teamwork as a team. You could be doing
You're right.
right.
You're absolutely right. It needs to be teamwork, Christopher. You're doing a great job summarizing what I'm saying in a short, clear way. Thank you. Right. Um, Another piece that I would like to say here is caring for oneself as you care for the others. It's super important. And I know we have maybe fathers here, but especially for mothers. It's expected of women to sacrifice. It's expected of mothers to just give and give and give and put themselves always on the back burner. And it never comes their turn. So the metaphor with like you need to put your oxygen mask, pretty much I would say that burnout, it's so much easier to prevent it than to recover from burnout. So when we care for ourselves, we actually care for the whole family. We care for the others, and we should make it a priority. If you wish, we should consider it. Putting ourselves always on the back burner would not do any service to our loved ones or to ourselves long term. So this is me giving you permission, and I know you know that. I'm talking to the choir here in some ways. Choir, yeah. Like um resisting comparison. I think that this one is a big one for me because this goes hand in hand a little bit with grief, which, by the way, we need to allow grief to have a voice. And grief is not something that we work through. Grief, it becomes a companion throughout life. And at different stages in life, grief will hit us in a different way. And we need to focus a lot more on like resisting comparison. We need to focus on, that's why in some ways, those meditations on gratefulness, we have a lot of things to be grateful for. And we can stay as much as we can with that, what we can be grateful for without comparing others. I remember mothers saying, my best friend, our children grew up together. They were born days apart. And I can see when they go to school, when they get married, when they have children, my friends' children having, and we are in a different spot. And we have a different trajectory. So that's the continual kind of grief that beside the pain and the worries and the suffering that we are experiencing, we also have the natural comparison, if you wish, that we notice, we allow it to be there, and then we go back to where we are to ground ourselves. 2 minutes, Lord help us. I would like to make the difference a little bit here, even if this is the last thing I would say. In my work, I focus quite a bit on empathy and compassion. And this would be a whole other talk, but there's a big difference between sympathy, pity, empathy, and compassion. And usually, families who um, have live with disabilities, they are often at the receiving end of pity. And that's a terrible thing, actually. When people look down, when they have pity for the other, they're looking down at somebody, feeling good about themselves that, oh, I'm helping. I'm doing something for the other, and they become patronizing. Pity is a terrible thing, an absolutely terrible thing. And we need to help people see it in a bit of a different way, right? And that's why when I go back to belonging, it needs to be absolutely mutual. That mutual love and respect for every human being, because otherwise it becomes a patronizing pity thing towards people and families who struggle. And people have a lot of unhelpful sayings. Oh, God must love you so much that they gave you your loved one. You're so special. And God, oh, I don't have nice words when I hear those. I don't swear, but in those moments, I feel it inside me like swearing. Yes. And I would say that one thing that is important also for us to do is befriending uncertainty and uncomfortability. I think that that is part of the burnout prevention and part of the journey with us. We live in a society that values productivity, and what message that sends us all about our families. And if we view life like this, we are missing the gifts that everyone brings. And this belonging thing is just a talk. If we view the world in productivity, consumerism way, if we talk about belonging, we are just missing the point. So I do think that we are all lovable, fallible children of God in need of grace. May God bless you all. Thank you.